All right, so there's a couple new Nintendo Switch 2 leaks floating around online, one of which dealing with the exact price point from a major retailer that has been found in a placeholder listing for this console, which is very interesting, and the other of which has to do with the actual console itself potentially being out there in the wild. So huge implications on both fronts. The price point one, it's coming from Costco. It's an interesting story we have to unpack, but it would be on the lower end of the price point that we want to see this console ultimately sold for. So a good news scenario if it does end up checking out. And it also suggests that Nintendo might be planning something very interesting with their current lineup of family of Switch consoles, because it also suggests that maybe the OLED model might not be around for too much longer. And when it comes to the console being out there leaked in the wild itself, it's from a reliable source, somebody who actually originally showed us the console well in advance to Nintendo, at least the CAD rendering file of it. And if this console's out in the wild, well, it might be round two of the floodgates of Nintendo Switch 2 leaks opening up, because while Nintendo has now officially revealed the hardware, there's still a ton of unknown, including the OS, what does things look like, what's the actual graphical capabilities of this console, the exact specs, things like that we may ultimately learn. So we're gonna get on the same page with all of this info. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick it off by hopping over to Go Nintendo, where they do have the write-up on exactly what's going on with this Costco placeholder from an employee who has actually posted an internal picture of the back-end system. So it does appear to be like they are a Costco employee. Nothing seems off here or that they're fudging the information, but you can first see this article which says, rumor Costco placeholder might hint at Switch 2 price. Nintendo's president Shintaro Furukawa said that they know fans expect the Switch 2 to maintain Nintendo's tradition of offering affordable hardware. That said, Nintendo isn't ready to talk Switch 2 price just yet, and they would like to get to the April 2nd, 2025 Nintendo Direct out the door before they even consider discussing those details. That said, fans are still extremely curious to see where the price lands, and we may have just gotten a glimpse today. A Costco Canada employee has taken to Family Boards to share something interesting they spotted behind the scenes. The employee who shared the photographic evidence noticed that Costco's internal computer system had a Nintendo Switch placeholder listing. Along with that, they also had Nintendo Switch placeholder printout signage as well. What's most interesting is that the listing came with a price. According to the listing, this Nintendo Switch placeholder is priced at $499 Canadian. That would equate to roughly $350 USD, but it's important to note that the Switch OLED usually retails for $450 in Canada, and we know the pricing here is $350. With that in mind, it would mean that this listing would work out to be roughly $400 USD in the States. So out of all the different price point leaks we've discussed so far on this channel, I have very much liked that $399 price point. A little bit concerning to hear some sources like Special Nick straight up say from multiple different sources they have heard stuff like the $450 price point as the base console, and then $499 with some kind of Mario Kart bundle. But that is one particular insider suggesting that, and we don't have a whole lot else to go off of suggesting that that will be Nintendo's price point around this. And I really feel like personally that $399 feels like the right price point for this console, even though there is some validity to the idea that Nintendo may do a bundle edition of this console with a pack-in game like Mario Kart, because Next Handheld, the user who got their hands on the console early, did suggest that that would be taking place, a special edition console with a pack-in game for Mario Kart. So maybe there is some validity to Special Nick's source around that. Maybe the price points are just off, but I don't think the $350 thing is happening. We saw that Best Buy screenshot making the rounds where if you Googled Nintendo Switch 2, Best Buy had it listed for $349. I think that that's tying things to the OLED model that they currently have, and that's like a back-end thing that's happening. Don't think that $350 is going to be the price point, considering that's the price point for the OLED today for Nintendo's next generation hardware. But talking about the OLED briefly, and this is one of the very interesting things that popped up from this internal employee's claims here from Costco, they are saying that the OLED model specifically does not have any more shipments coming in, and that they are actually marked for deletion for that SKU, essentially meaning that Nintendo's not supplying any more, and what they sell through is the end of it, and they will not carry the OLED model any longer. Now, full credit goes to John over at SpawnWave, because on an episode of the Spawncast that I was on, he suggested that Nintendo, in their own financial reports, have revealed that the OLED model is actually not a good profit margin for Nintendo. It's a very small margin, and he speculated that you need to have more of a price gap than just $50 if you are going to launch your new console at $399. You don't want to have an OLED model for just $50 less from the previous generation. and he suggested the idea that maybe Nintendo would discontinue the OLED model and just keep the red box Switch around, because while the OLED model has been the predominant model that's being sold since it launched, the margins are bad on it. You also might not want to have a technically superior screen in OLED technology right next to a brand new console that has an LCD panel in it. Now, we don't know for 100% certain that the Switch 2 is going to have an LCD panel, but according to various leaks and things, it seems like that's what's going on. And I do think that for that price point of $399, we should expect an LCD display. It doesn't mean it's going to look like the Switch 1. LCD has come a long way since then. If you've played a PlayStation Portal, the display on that looks great. You're just not going to get the true deep blacks like you can on an OLED, and also get some of that, top level color contrast. Things in general, though, are far superior to what the OG Switch looked like, and I'm not expecting us to go back to an OG Switch looking screen, but LCD tech at its core as opposed to OLED tech should be what we expect here. And that would be a very interesting move for Nintendo to go ahead and discontinue technically a superior model of the Nintendo Switch, but it is in the wheelhouse of possibilities, considering that their big push for selling consoles is going to kind of drift away from Switch 1, and they may not want to have that less profitable and upgraded screen tech OLED model sitting on a shelf next to their new console for just $50 less. I do think that that is a entirely possibility that Nintendo explores, and this Costco listing and this leak from the employee technically suggests that that is what they might be planning. So none of this is confirmed. Clearly, $399 seems like the logical price for just at least the console itself, and we'll see if some kind of bundle edition with Mario Kart ultimately gets marketed as well. You throw in a $70 game like Mario Kart, it's going to be 70, not 60 anymore, kids, and you get it for 50 as part of the pack-in. Although, the problem with that is going to be is that they're going to give you a download code. I'm going to want to pick that up physically, so I probably won't opt for the bundle edition, but it might be a special edition console according to Next Handheld, and we might have a black and white SKU variant at launch for this. So there's still lots we have to learn, but in terms of shifting gears and talking about what we might learn about the console before April 2nd, assuming that this next claim is true, that the Nintendo Switch 2 retail console might actually be out there in the wild, because you can see first this post from Necrofelipe, which outlines the user who previously shared Switch 2 CAD model on, I'm not going to say that name, a Chinese forum, claims that he obtained a real Switch 2, probably illegally, definitely, I would say, more than likely. He advises those interested in accessories to contact him for testing with the device. So while we don't have new information about the console leaking out from this, other than just the claim that this user has it, this would be the time to kind of start to, like, if you want to literally avoid all of the leaks of the actual console itself before Nintendo gets a chance to show it to us officially and market it to us, this is kind of getting to that point. Now, they may not go, gates open and talk about everything that they know about the console and post all these different pictures of it turned on and things like that. I also wonder, is it finalized OS software on this right now? I mean, assuming that retail boxes are already being finalized and sent to Nintendo, I would assume you could turn on the console and look at what the OS is going to look like pre any day one updates or anything like that, obviously. But if they're just straight up asking accessory manufacturers, send over questions because they're going to provide information that will be helpful to them. And this is the same user who did give us that accurate CAD rendering of what the Switch 2 looked like far before we knew what it would look like from Nintendo. It seems like we would be in line to expect a number of different leaks that have not been revealed about the console yet. And would they be able to determine things like the power profiles and exactly what the console is clocked at from a power standpoint? It is definitely a possibility, and we might get some different images of the console if this is a real claim. I tend to believe it just due to the sourcing on it, because that CAD rendering, if you look back at the original leak, it just lined up 100% accurately as we now know it. It's like we knew the form factor of the console far before Nintendo chose to give us that first look trailer. So we may be into kind of a round for another leaks of Nintendo Switch 2 coming up soon, but obviously not a whole lot to go off of other than this user saying, yeah, they have one. How they obtained it, who knows? maybe from a developer, maybe from somebody in manufacturing, but nonetheless, nefarious ways of going about obtaining it for sure. And we'll have to wait and see if big information unofficially stems from this particular leak and this particular user going forward. But I will clearly be covering that stuff here on the channel. So if it gets into crazy spoiler territory where like some people might not want to know, of course, obviously I will preface the video ahead of time with, hey, this is like an actual look at the console with the OS and everything. I can't wait to see the OS. That's personally what I really want to see at this point. I really want to see if we're looking at a different looking home screen, multiple different themes available at launch. Let's hope not just a light and dark theme. Like I'm ready to see what Nintendo's been cooking on the OS end and how things are going to look when we boot up this console. But let me know in the comments down below what you make of both these different stories. Are you feeling better about the $399 USD price point for Nintendo Switch 2? And do you think that this Costco listing is actually tied to that? Do you think maybe this is some kind of placeholder for a different variant of the Switch, or something related to Switch 1 and not Switch 2? I'm definitely feeling like this is probably Switch 2, but the real question is does Costco actually know the price point? They may. It's possible that Nintendo communicates that to retailers ahead of time, but I really don't think that they would want to, considering that they're not ready to go live with those pre-orders until something like April 2nd when the Direct takes place. But this is up in the air, and it is a possibility. But what do you make of it? And out of what hasn't been revealed from the console yet, like the OS, what are you most excited to see personally? Do you just want to see the clock speeds and kind of what this thing can run at from a power profile perspective, or are you thinking more OS level features is what you want to see? What does that C button do and all of that kind of stuff? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.